Okay, here we are again. Looks like I had a little connectivity problems once again. So today I'm going to talk about curiosity as a tool for weight loss. And there are three critical success factors in what and how I work with individual clients to change their past and to lose 40 pounds. And those are what we put into our mouth, how we treat our bodies, and also what is going on in our mind. And today we're going to talk about the first and the last, what we put into our mouth and how we look at what's going on in our mind. So curiosity, of course, starts with, are you curious about your situation today? Do you believe that it can change, and do you want to change it? Even asking yourself, do I want to change my situation, and do I believe that I can be successful? These are questions that if you are open and curious, you can come up with some answers to. So first I want to tell you a little bit about myself and my own weight loss journey. So about 15 years ago, first off, my name is Pat Beaupre-Becker. I'm a certified life coach, and about 15 years ago, I found myself in a place of major depression. I was about 173 pounds, which was the weight that I was when I had my daughter at full term, and I was really depressed. My brother had passed away, and I was grieving, and I was just stuck in incredible sadness. I was just married, and I had an incredible, wonderful marriage. There was nothing wrong there. So all of the things that were kind of on the surface seemed to be okay, and well, more than okay, and yet I was still incredibly depressed. And I was eating lots and lots of sugar and overeating a lot, and just trying to, my insides, my emotional life was so sad and depressed and painful that I was eating so that my physical body actually would match my emotional. So the pain on the outside and would match the pain on the inside. It wasn't a good way to live. So a friend of mine saw that I was miserable, and she invited me to go to a meeting where I learned about eating a certain way, and I learned about the theory of food addiction. And I was very, very desperate, and I was very curious to see how it was possible to solve the problem of depression by the food that I was eating. But in any case, I jumped in, and as a result, I lost 40 pounds in about 3 months, 3.5 months, and my depression lifted, and life started to make sense. I still had these thoughts and feelings about myself as a survivor of child abuse that were going on in my subconscious, but things were pretty much a whole lot better. Anyway, I decided that I wasn't going to manage my food anymore. I just wanted to kind of be free, and so I went back to eating the standard American diet, and eventually gained my weight plus back, and at 180 pounds I decided to go back to eating and getting support for losing this weight. And that was about 3 years ago, and I have been around 141, 142 ever since then. Actually lost a little bit more, but I had to gain a little bit back. So one of the things I teach clients is what to eat, how much to eat, and when to eat. And this has worked very successfully for me and for many other people. The other thing that I discovered in this process is the latest research about obesity, and it is fascinating because it's not a matter of self-will, it's not a matter of a character defect when we are struggling with stopping eating or gaining weight and trying to stick to a diet over and over again. So with the new understanding that I have been reading about through curiosity is that now they understand that the kinds of foods, you put them in your body, and your body has a certain reaction. It's physiological, it's biological. And I think about it like when I was pregnant and when I was in labor. Now, I learned breathing tools so that I could, manage my fears about being pregnant. But when those contractions came and my cervix started dilating, I mean, there was no control. I had no control. My body was in charge. And so the same way, when we put foods into our body that aren't natural foods, then our bodies have a certain reaction, and there's a lot of hormones involved in the way we digest and assimilate our food. And there's been lots of discoveries and scientific studies about insulin, ghrelin, leptin, and cortisol. So it's really important that we look at the whole system when we're talking about weight loss. So we want to look at what we're eating, if we're getting enough sleep, how much stress is in our life, and all of those pieces together are what I include in my program, so make it a more holistic way. So I always will give a food plan there with lots of choices, but we create a protocol together, and that's kind of how people succeed in losing weight and then keeping it off. So the second part I want to talk about is the mind. So thoughts and feelings. As a survivor of child abuse, which I invite any of you who are also survivors to sign up for my free guide, How to Change Your Past and Lose 40 Pounds, and you can get that on my website. So I have my own theory. So as a child, when the abuse events were happening, my physiological, biological body and my mind were in high alert. Okay, so the event is happening. I don't know what's happening. My flight, freeze, the stress response that was going on in my body was quite often freeze. So there I was in this freeze position for so much time that when things kind of calmed down, it felt like it wasn't natural. And so eating sugar at that point in time was kind of like this shot of dopamine that would give me that hit, that high, that would then match that sensation that I had, which was coming to be normal. It wasn't normal, but it was in my own brain, in the habitual nature and the homeostasis. The brain and the body, they want to stay the same. So the more something happens, the more it will continue to happen. It's the idea of neurons that fire together, wire together. So I could see how sugar was something that, and in those days, of course, it was limited by my mother, how much we could afford, and there were lots of limitations. Later on, when I was on my own and I could buy as much as I wanted, and it was cheap and it was everywhere, it became my go-to kind of drug. And then, of course, there were other things that I also pursued, which perhaps weren't the best for me, but makes sense now that my physiological body and my emotional body was trying to stay at homeostasis, which was not necessarily a great place. So the other thing, of course, that we've learned and that I talk about a lot is neuroplasticity. So now we know, and I know because I have the experience, that we can change our brain. So a curiosity is a big part of that. Curiosity assumes that you don't know something. It's not self-judgment. And in many ways, when I started my weight loss journey, I would ask questions, but not all questions have equal value. So if I ask the question, why am I so fat? The response that I often got from my own brain was, because you're a loser, because you have no discipline. And so those questions weren't really helpful, and they were really rooted in self-judgment. They were not rooted in curiosity. So I had to learn to take that, and as I spoke about last week, I developed the skill of looking at things with more curiosity. Because one of the things that we know, Brooke Castillo has said over and over, is you cannot hate yourself thin. We cannot lose weight from a place of hatred, self-hatred, and self-denigration. I have tried, and it certainly is not something that is sustainable. And is that something that you want to do? So I really take curiosity and look at those questions and look at those feelings. So for me, I believed that because I was abused as a child, I had incredible feelings of shame and self-hatred. And those feelings led me to overeat and to create more pain in my life. And the result was that I was overweight. So when I learned the tools of curiosity and looking at what it is I'm thinking, what it is I'm doing, and what are the results, and how can I wiggle those thoughts, how could I change those thoughts and take different actions, and by taking different actions I can get different results. So, Einstein says we cannot solve the problems we created with the same thinking that we used when we created them. So we have to find a different way of thinking, and it doesn't have to be brutal, it doesn't have to be mean, it can be kind and loving. And that is what I work with my clients, is that essentially we want to love ourselves better, love ourselves into healing, but also to take responsibility for what we put into our mouths ourselves, and to become emotionally mature adults and take hold of our lives. Once we know what it is from that place of emotional adulthood, with life can just be so much more interesting and fun. And when you're over 60, you have no more time to lose. So if you're over 60, if you're a survivor, and if you're looking to lose 40 pounds, I really urge you to join my program. You can go to my website and you can get the free guide, and I'll be doing a webinar to teach a little bit more at the end of the month. So sign up for the guide, and then you will get the information about the webinar. So please, the month of January, be curious. Be curious about what you're putting in your mouth. Read labels. Be curious about what it is that you're eating, and be kind. So that's my Facebook for today. Take care, and I'll see you next week. Bye.